You wake up before your alarm goes off, and there they are. Two eyes, already open, already watching you, waiting for the exact moment you shift under the blanket so they can leap onto the bed. Your dog has been awake for 20 minutes, studying you, reading your breathing, reading your face. You think you trained him. You think you're the one in charge here. You are not. For 99% of human history, we told ourselves a simple story. Humans found wolves. Humans tamed wolves. Humans turned wolves into obedient companions who guard us, serve us, love us unconditionally. It's a comforting story. It's also backwards. Go back roughly 20,000 to 40,000 years to the edges of ancient human campsites scattered across Eurasia. Piles of bones, scraps of meat, waste nobody wanted. Around those piles, wolves started to gather. Not tame wolves, not friendly wolves, just the boldest, calmest wolves in the pack, the ones willing to sit a little closer to the fire, a little closer to the danger, because the reward was food without the fight. Biologist Raymond Coppinger called this self-domestication. Nobody captured these wolves. Nobody bred them in cages. They walked in on their own, generation after generation, and natural selection did the rest. The wolves who could tolerate human presence ate more. The wolves who couldn't starved or fled. Within a few thousand years, an animal had rewired its own genetics, its own hormones, its own face, just to move in closer to us. Here's the part that stops most people. This wasn't cooperation between equals. This was a wild predator running a long, patient operation on an entire species, and we never noticed it happening. Now some of you are thinking, fine, so dogs adapted to live near us. That still sounds like our environment, our rules. We built the camp, they simply learned to survive in it. But adaptation isn't the whole story. What came next is stranger because it stopped being about survival and started being about influence. Geneticist Robert Wayne's research into canine DNA traced the split between wolves and dogs back tens of thousands of years, far earlier than farming, far earlier than permanent houses. Dogs got inside human life before we even had walls to let them into, and once inside, they kept changing. A 2013 study led by geneticist Erik Axelsson found that dogs, unlike wolves, carry extra copies of a gene that digests starch. While humans were inventing agriculture, dogs were quietly rewriting their own biology to survive on our leftover grain. They didn't just move into our camps, they adapted their digestion to our diet before we ever domesticated a single crop on purpose. And it wasn't only biology. Researcher Brian Hare ran a now-famous experiment. He hid food under one of two cups, then pointed at the correct cup. Chimpanzees, our closest genetic relatives, mostly failed to follow the point. Dogs, tested in the very same rooms, got it almost every time, even as puppies with no training at all. Dogs evolved a skill chimps never developed in 6 million years of separate evolution, the ability to read a human gesture as if it were a sentence. Think about what that means. An animal was selected generation after generation for one specific trait, not strength, not speed, not even loyalty exactly. The trait was legibility to us. Dogs became fluent in human attention because the ones who could read us best got fed first, protected first, kept closest to the fire. Scientists still argue about exactly where this happened. A 2016 genomic study led by archaeologist Gregor Larson, published in the journal Science, suggested dogs may have been domesticated not once but twice, once somewhere in Eastern Asia and once in Western Eurasia, with the two populations later mixing as humans migrated. Two separate wild wolf populations on two sides of a continent apparently ran the same operation on humans independently, and both times the wolves want a place by the fire. There's an experiment that shows how fast this kind of transformation can happen. In 1959, Soviet scientist Dmitry Belyaev began breeding silver foxes, choosing only the calmest individuals from each generation. Within a few generations, without anyone trying to change their bodies at all, the foxes grew floppy ears, curled tails, and patchy coats. Selecting for tameness alone rewired their whole physical form. If that shift can happen in a lab in a few decades, imagine what 20,000 years of the same pressure running wild across an entire continent could do to a species desperate to stay close to the fire. Here's the comparison that changes how you see your own living room. Cats moved in around 10,000 years ago too, drawn to the rodents infesting the first grain stores, but cats solved their own problem. They never needed to read us the way dogs did. That's why a cat will ignore you and still get dinner, while a dog will stare into your soul until you hand over half your sandwich. That stare isn't an accident. In 2015, researcher Takafumi Kikusui published a study in the journal Science showing that when a dog and its owner make eye contact, both of them get a spike in oxytocin, the same hormone that floods a mother's brain while she holds her newborn. Dogs found a way to trigger the exact neurochemical loop evolution built for parents and infants, and they triggered it on a completely different species using nothing but a look. No other domesticated animal does this. Not horses, not cattle, not sheep. Somewhere in those 20,000 years, dogs found the emotional backdoor into the human brain and let themselves in, and the effect runs both directions now. A 2019 study on stress hormones found that a dog's cortisol levels sync with its owner's cortisol levels over time, rising and falling together across the seasons like two instruments tuned to the same note. Live with a dog long enough, and your nervous system and theirs start keeping the same rhythm. That's not something a leash does. That's something a relationship does. And dogs built the relationship on their own terms. So who domesticated whom? We built the fences, we built the shelters, the routines, the bowls on schedule, but dogs built something more permanent. Researchers have found that dogs use a specific facial muscle, the one that raises the inner eyebrow, far more than wolves do. It's the muscle behind the expression we call puppy eyes, and it makes a dog's face look almost human, almost pleading, almost impossible to refuse. We think we chose our best friend. The truth is closer to this. An animal spent 20,000 years auditioning for the role of beloved companion, refining the performance generation after generation, every less convincing rival eliminated by hunger or distance from the fire, until only the most persuasive candidates remained. No committee designed this. No human sat down and decided which traits to breed for, not for most of those 20,000 years. The wolves did the casting themselves, and the fire was the only judge. Then the winning candidates moved into our beds, our laps, and our family photos and stayed there. This is the part nobody says out loud. Domestication was never something we did to them. It was a negotiation running quietly over hundreds of generations, and the species with the better read on human emotion won every round. You still believe you decided to get a dog. Maybe you picked the breed, maybe you picked the color, the size, the shelter. But behind those decisions sits 20,000 years of patient pressure, built one campfire at a time by an animal that learned exactly which look would make you reach for the leash instead of walking past. Tonight, when you get home, a dog will be waiting at the door before your key even turns, watching your face, reading your mood before you've said a word, adjusting its whole body language to match whatever it finds there. And you'll believe the way humans always have that this is simple loyalty. It isn't simple. It's the oldest, quietest negotiation our species ever lost, 20,000 years running. No treaty ever signed, no terms ever discussed out loud. Somewhere along the way, a wild predator turned itself into the one animal on Earth we can't imagine living without. And somehow losing that negotiation feels exactly like winning.